Hi everyone, welcome back to another continuing education check-in. We're really excited for today's episode. It's a more serious topic. We're talking about how to find closure after the talking stage. And so there are many stages in a relationship. Today we're only focusing on the talking stage, and at some point we'll address how to find closure after dating, maybe how to find closure after marriage. And so those are things that you can look forward to. And then our end segment today is another, what would ChatGPT do? And I feel like everything is going to tie together really well. There's an elephant in the room, Sania. We're not exactly sure how much you guys would have seen from last episode, but Sania brought out her big guns. We're talking about bomber plane kind of ammunition and just dropped it at the end of the episode. And so is there anything that you want to address on that?
So we bleeped out most of what we said at the end of last episode just to save people's identities, I think. And we'll probably start sharing that a little bit as we keep going. But for right now, no, I think Ethan gave me a lot of advice on the big bomb that I dropped on him last week. And mostly his advice was just to do nothing, to not act on anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was also to not continue, but also remind you that you have options. Because oftentimes when we're in a situation like that, we can feel trapped. We can feel like it's affecting other areas of our life. But I wanted you to feel like that wasn't the case. That you have a lot of options and you're not tied down to this at all.
Yeah.
And hopefully I gave you some clarity about this person that is involved.
Yeah, and his intent. I feel like you did give me a lot of clarity on that. I feel like as girls, and I was just talking to my friend about this yesterday, we make a lot of excuses for guys, and we really take whatever words that they're telling us as fact. Oh, he's saying this, so he must mean it. But I think a lot of the times, Ethan, you're right. A lot of times guys will say whatever they need to say just to meet their end goals.
Yeah. And
it's not necessarily the truth.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're feeling okay about it?
I'm feeling way better about it.
All right. Well, do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Do you have any tea? Aren't you going away this week?
Yeah, but so just for some context for all of you, Sania and I, sometimes we have business meetings, and I've been dying to ask Sania for advice for a little bit, and sometimes, it's hard because we want to, as much as we can, to do it live so that you can hear it along with us and we can get our genuine reactions. But it becomes really hard when I want advice right away and I can't get it. And so Sania and I were talking this weekend, and I really needed advice at that point. And because I ended things with Houston.
Wait, what? You ended things with Houston.
Yesterday.
But you're going to Houston. You're still flying to Houston.
I'm still going to Houston, yes.
Please explain.
So I want to be careful about how I talk about this, because at first I thought this was going to be a really easy process for me, and I was going to be able to navigate this well. And I thought that after I ended things, I would feel really free. But actually the opposite happened, where I ended things. I was very clear in my communication, and she took it very well. But at the end of the day, it made me feel really bad. I felt a little unsure of myself in the moment.
Yeah.
I think looking back, it was the right thing to do. But because she took it so well, and because she was really hurt by it, it hurt me too.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'm going to say is the reason why I ended things was last week I had a moment of clarity.
Okay.
That there's so many things going on in my life right now. There's work, there's this podcast, but there's many other things going on that I know that right now I shouldn't be in a relationship.
Wait, what? Why are you only feeling this way when things are getting serious with someone?
So after Houston made the request to start talking every day, everything became so real. And on the podcast when I brought that up, initially I was unsure because I thought it was a little too early for her to ask that of me.
Right.
But I realized since then, I forget which of my friends told me this, but whoever you are a gem. But my friend told me that when you're in a long distance relationship, this is important. It's necessary to build up that kind of chemistry because you're not seeing them every day. And so if you're going a day at a time without talking, you're missing out on a lot. You're not...
Okay.
It's kind of going backwards by not talking. Whereas in person, if you see them, you're not only having conversation with them, but you're seeing how they act in certain situations.
Right.
All the little things you're picking up on. Long distance, you're not.
Okay.
That's why the conversation becomes more important, and it's important to have that consistently.
Okay.
And so what I realized is that I couldn't do that. And so maybe that is more specific to long distance, but I do think that in this moment, I can't give that kind of attention and care to anyone.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
That was like my main point to her.
Okay.
And then I think on top of that, the other things that are happening is I'm realizing that there's old scars that I need to heal from. And I had some good conversations over the weekend. I forget who again, but one of my friends told me that you don't have to be fully healed when you get into a relationship. Okay. You know, a lot of times with your significant other, you go through that healing process together. And but I think recently, just on top of everything, like feeling kind of overwhelming, I realized that there's healing that I need to do on my side. And I didn't want to continue knowing that I wouldn't be able to do a good job and give her what she deserves. Yeah. And also be a little half-hearted because once she made that request, I knew it was going to be hard, but I also was not doing a good job talking to her every day.
Wait, I just have to ask.
Yeah.
Did you talk to her first? Because I know you didn't like this everyday talking idea. Did you talk to her first and like let her know that it's not, you know, you're not super excited to be doing that? Or was the conversation like the first time she heard that you didn't like that? Was it just when you guys were breaking up?
It was when we were breaking up.
Okay.
And I'm not going to get into everything we talked about, but she said that she could see it coming because she could see that I wasn't doing a good job communicating with her the past 2 weeks. And she gave me the benefit of the doubt, but she knew that it was hard on me. Right. And I knew that I didn't want to play games. I knew she could tell that I was having a hard time. And if I was going to continue the relationship, I would have that talk with her. That I'm having trouble with this and how can we meet in the middle or figure this out. But for me, even if we made adjustments, it doesn't make everything else that's happening easier on me. Right. And so I think I realized even if she said we don't have to talk every day, let's say we talk once a week, that's being a little extreme. Yeah. It still wouldn't help me because I realized now that in order to make a relationship like this actually work, like that's not even gonna help. That might make things worse.
Yeah. And so do you feel like you came to the breakup decision on your own? Like you didn't, because you know how a lot of times people will say, oh, we decided to break things off together. Like do you feel like you kind of decided and you told her? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll just talk a little bit and we'll bleep stuff out if we need. But I think for her, she's very invested in this relationship, and so she's willing to work through anything.
Yeah.
And so this decision was definitely one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's gonna hurt a lot for her.
Yeah.
It hurts for me too, but for me, I had like my moment of clarity, and I just know, and my friends have had to reassure me that if I didn't do it this way, there would be more pain in the future, because I would never be able to meet her expectations. Not like with how I'm living life right now. And so for me, I know it had to be done. And so the logic kind of helps me.
Right.
But for her, I think there's a lot of pain, and she's very sweet about it. She's very understanding. She did not question me.
Yeah.
And I think for me that made it a little harder, knowing that she's being very mature about it, but at the same time really sad.
Right.
And over the weekend, what I wanted to ask you, Sania, was I already knew that I wanted to shut things down, but I didn't know exactly when to do it.
Okay.
At first I was thinking I was going to do it in Houston.
In person.
And I felt like that was, like, as a man, I felt like that was the right thing to do, to talk about it in person. But then at the same time, I was like, if I know this already, I don't want to spring it on her at the end of a date or something.
Right.
And so I was kind of going back and forth. I wanted to ask you, but ultimately I decided, let me do it now, because I want to communicate how I'm feeling in the moment, especially after I've processed my thoughts.
Yeah.
But then I'll give her a chance to talk in person if she wants to.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are you guys planning to still see each other while you're there?
It's not clear.
Yeah.
So I told her, I was like, if you don't feel like you have closure and you want to talk more about this, I will be available when I'm there next week. And she said that she has closure, and she said that she would still like to meet me, but she's not sure if that's a good idea.
Right.
So she's gonna talk with her girlfriends and figure out what's best.
Right.
And she said, maybe even if we do meet, like, I'll have to bring my friend and she'll have to bring her friends. And like us meeting it wouldn't be related to the relationship.
Okay.
It would be she's curious to get to know me as a person.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like who wouldn't pass on a chance to meet a celebrity? Right?
Shut up. Huh. Okay, and I'm also confused about, so I'm glad that you had this moment of clarity.
Yeah.
And honestly, yeah, you're right. Like, it is, if you are feeling confused about stuff, it is better to end it sooner rather than later, because then you're going to keep making excuses to stay, and then it's all going to still explode later on. But I guess because now you're saying you realize that you kind of maybe don't want to even be seeing anyone. And so what made you think that, you're talking about a lot of scars that you need to heal from. So what's making all of those come up?
It's because I still see the people that gave me those scars, and also I'm like still thinking about it sometimes. Like, it affects my self-confidence when there's nothing in front of me to do, like I'm on the train or I'm lying in my bed in the morning, like I would think about it. I would like replay these situations in my mind.
Right.
And so it has affected me. It has affected my work. It has affected how I spend my free time. And I don't know exactly what that healing is going to look like.
Right.
I do think I've healed a lot, but there's some like end processing that I still have to just finish up.
Okay. And you think until you were done that, you don't want to be in a relationship?
Actually, I think I can still be in a relationship. And I think the big piece of the puzzle is for me waiting until things kind of clear up in terms of what I'm juggling, so that I can be ready to give that attention and care to another person.
Right. Do you think you more so ended things off with her because you didn't want to, like you said, you didn't want to like half-ass do things with Houston? Like you wanted to give her everything that she deserves? Or was it more so about like also about you and like maybe for some reason maybe Houston wasn't the right one for you?
I don't want to answer this right now.
Okay, that's fair.
And I can talk about it in the future, but
that's pretty fresh.
Yeah. Not only fresh, but I'm still like really sad about it and how it went down, and so I want to be careful about what I say, and we can talk about it more later. Yeah. But I would say, just to not leave any of you on the hook, is a little bit of both. Okay, that's fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking, as Sania and I picked this topic a while ago, Sania was like, we should talk about this topic, and so the timing of everything just kind of not worked out, but it just kind of came together. Yeah. And so I talked about what I just did, ending the talking stage. Right. And I know there's a situation that you want to talk about, Sania, that that maybe isn't as obvious on how to end. Yeah. Which situation is that? So there's this guy that you were talking to a while ago. A year ago, right? Yeah. Oh, and he's still texting you. Yeah. So I'm so sorry if this guy's out there and he's watching this, but maybe I'm not. Maybe this is like the communication that he needs to understand. Basically, though, there was this guy that I went on 2 dates with. The first date was just like I was sick, and he just came by close to my house. We went to go get tea because I was sick. Like, it wasn't, I mean, sure, we can call it a date, but yeah. And then the second time we went to go get dinner, and it was a really good dinner. Like, I had really good memories of that dinner. Like, I'm not really a big foodie, but like that food was really good. And, you know, he planned everything in advance. Like, it was just all really cute. And I think if he had just left it at that, it would have stayed being a good memory. But basically, I'm not very good at, okay, so like Ethan and I say a lot, we both have kind of like flirty personalities. So I think, you know, on a date, like the person in front of me won't know, oh, is Sania actually into me, or is she just like, is this just her personality? And I think that's what this guy kind of got confused. I think he thought I was very into him because, you know, I talk a lot, I share a lot, and like that's just my personality. But it wasn't me being interested in him in that way, because it was only 2 dates that we went on, right? And yeah, and I've never ever in my life been good at ending things with anybody. I'd rather just like I like to just like keep waiting until they just eventually leave, because I have a really hard time doing that. But with this guy, because of stuff that was going on in my life at that time, I was like, you know what, everybody deserves clear communication. Like, you know, even if it wasn't that deep for me, like clearly it was like that deep for him, so I should just, you know, like sit down and like let him know. And so I decided to go out the cop-out route because I was not that close to him. So I just sent him a really like, you know, I edited like a text like 50 times over, I feel like, to make it really polite, make it personalized, because I know a lot of guys don't like getting the generic, like, oh, you're a nice guy, but... So I made it really personalized about him, and I just like... I lied for the reason of why I needed to stop talking to him. I said that there was some, like, that I met somebody else, but... I thought that because he was so persistent, I thought that was the only reason that would keep him at bay. Like, I don't think I could just tell him, like, oh, I just need to be alone. Like, because he would try to convince me otherwise. So I texted him. And after that text, he was like, oh, no. Like, you need to have a call with me. Like, I don't get it. And I was like, okay, first of all, like, I've only gone on 2 dates with you. I don't think I owe you, like, a call. But I was like, you know what? Again, maybe it was more deep for him. Like, let me talk to him. So I had a call. We, like, talked for hours, I feel like. And
again, I was like pretty strict on my point of like, no, we can't be together, because like I made up an excuse that there was somebody from school that I really liked and we were just friends and it turned into something, and so I'm so sorry. And this was like Valentine's Day last year or something like that, when I was telling him that I'm going out with somebody from school. And this guy, because, okay, I don't like to block people's numbers because I feel like they're going to find a way to reach you anyway, so I might as well leave that channel of communication. Not necessarily that I'm going to communicate back, but basically this guy texted me like 2 months after Valentine's, and then he texted me like 6 months after that, and then more recently he texted me like 2 weeks ago. And all of those texts I have not responded to, not ever. And maybe I can send Ethan screenshots just so he can see, but it's really sad because the guy keeps reaching out to me and he keeps saying that apparently, you know, maybe he feels like I wasn't very clear and he thinks that there's still a chance for us and that he would still really like to talk. And I'm just super confused. Like, did I do something wrong in my initial, you know, way of breaking things off with him? Because I know, you know, we're people pleasers. It's really hard to say something that you know the other person doesn't want to hear. So I'm just really like, yeah, and I feel really bad that it's been over a year, and I'm feeling like it's my fault that he's still, you know, thinking about me. But also, I have not communicated with him in over a year. Like, I've done nothing. When we stopped talking, he like deleted me on Instagram and everything. So there's no reason, you know, Sania should even be a thought that pops up into his mind.
Yeah.
So I just feel really bad, and I'm trying to like be reasonable and be like, you know what, maybe he tried to talk to other people and it didn't work out, and maybe that's how he keeps like coming back to the idea of like us. But I just don't know. I don't think that's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should respond, because again, I'm starting to feel really guilty because it's like the third text he sent with no response, and it's like really, they're really emotional texts, they're really loaded. And I don't know, I feel like if I was on the receiving end, like when I was breaking up with my ex, it took like a whole year for it to really stick, because I would keep going back to him because it just didn't make sense to me why we were broken up. And I feel like even though for me this thing with this guy wasn't that serious, like maybe if he needs the explanation, should I give him the explanation? I don't know. Like, I have no idea what to do.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on what you just said. The big thing that I want to start out with is I don't think you did anything wrong. In fact, you just telling him after 2 dates and letting him know where you stand and making it clear that you don't see this continuing is enough. I think especially in the talking stage, it depends on the situation, but a situation like that, you don't owe the other person that much. And so for you to communicate like that, that's the really mature thing to do. Even if you're not being fully truthful, it doesn't matter, because you're clear on the direction that you want to head. And so I think one thing that I really want to all the guys out there to really hear is that when you're in this situation, when you get rejected is a tough word, because even this guy probably didn't think he was 100% rejected. But when a girl even suggests no in some way, like they hint that they're not interested anymore, they're not replying to you, they tell you that there's someone else, or anything that falls under that umbrella, you need to back off. I know that as much as you want to convince her that you can be different, that you can make this relationship work, that's not how things work. And so speaking for the guys out there, this probably is not every single guy, but it's hard for a guy to get attached in general. But when a guy becomes infatuated and actually attached, it's very hard for them to come down from that.
And I totally agree. I think and sometimes it's easier for a girl to like move on past somebody when she gets over them compared to like a guy who is like into someone. And I totally like, this guy's out there. Like, I've also been in a situation, like I said, with my ex, like I was rejected and I was there like trying to convince him that like, no, it could still be me. So I fully understand all of his feelings, but it's just like, also we're a lot older now. He's like 2 years older than me. And like, my ex never gave me the clear communication when he was rejecting me that I gave this guy.
Yeah.
So I feel like, and also like this guy's just a little bit delulu. Like, okay, when I was dating, because I think I've said this like maybe before in this podcast, that I would like to think that I date for more serious reasons. So like, you know, I let everybody know, whether it's a first date or whatever, like, oh, like my plan is to like date to get married. Otherwise I'm not really interested. And so I did tell this guy that. And so even now, like, he's sending me texts about like, oh, like, were you serious about getting married? Like, da-da-da-da-da. Like, I talked to my dad and it would have to be this way, that way first. And I'm just like, I never said like it was going to be between like us. I was just setting like a thing, like, you know, just so that, you know, I'm not there to just waste my time and like waste anybody's time. But like, he's just like really, really like not able to accept the truth and like see things for like as they are. Like, even when I told him about my friend last year, he was like calling, texting. He was like, oh, but how do you know you like your friend and not you, and you don't like me? And he's trying to convince me of other stuff. And I was just like, my mind was in like shambles. I was like, how are you going to tell me who I like? Like,
yeah.
So I think I think part of it is that this guy has a lot of maturing that he needs to do.
Yeah. What I want to say is, when a girl ends things, and when we say end things, it can be the most casual ending of things. Like they're just not that willing to meet up anymore, and they don't make plans with you. A guy, in general, their initial reaction is to win the girl back. But what I want to say is, the only way you can win the girl back is if she herself changes her mind. And so a lot of guys out there think that they can change the girl's mind, but by you continuing to reach out and be persistent, you're not going to accomplish that.
It works against you.
Exactly.
Actually.
You're hurting yourself so much and hurting your chances. The best thing that you can do is move on, as painful as it is, and work on yourself. The fact that it didn't work out is not a reflection on your self-worth. It's not a reflection on who you are as a person. A lot of times it's just maybe there's incompatibilities, or there's something going on with the other person. And so don't take it personally. It might be your fault, but that should not stop you from focusing on yourself. If that happens, I recommend that you take a step back, you think about what you could have done better, and just take time to do your favorite hobbies and hang out with your friends.
Like when Ethan's saying move on, like he means like actually move on. I think a lot of people also get stuck in like they pretend move on, where they're like, you know, surface level they look like they've moved on, but deep down they're still stuck in those thoughts, and they're like, you know, unwilling to go on with their hobbies and their like activities and their passions. So like like actually move on and think that this person is not coming back. And also like I feel like a lot of times like people don't focus on like how you leave things with other people. And I've been, like I said, last year I had like a big wake up call, and I think you should always leave things off with other people on really good terms, because if you know, you never know what's going to happen in the future, and stuff could, you know, lead to a certain direction where maybe you guys could end up together. But if you are still there and you're persistent and you're not letting this person leave you when they're trying to, you're just leaving like a sour taste in her, like in the girl's mouth, and she's not going to want to come back.
If you think about it, let's say at the end of the day you do end up getting back together. If you ended up getting back together because you were persistent and you tried your best to change your mind, and you haven't changed as a person. The reason why she ended things is still gonna be there. But if you took the other path, you moved on, you focused on yourself, you did your own thing, and then you ended up back together. Now you've matured as a person. Now you've shown that you can be independent, and you're not solely relying on this relationship. And then the foundation is way stronger just because you're more mature. And I like, just to speak for myself, when the girl that I said breadcrumbs me, I had a really hard time grappling with that because my initial reaction was, let me just try harder. Let me text her again, and if we can go on another date, I can convince her.
Yeah.
And I ended up not doing that because I talked to my friends, and Sania actually told me that she would text me back. And you promised that, and she never did. And I had a really hard time coming to terms with that because I didn't feel like I had closure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I knew that if I texted her, it wouldn't be helping me at all. If she's not the right person for me, which I haven't fully convinced myself that she isn't, which is why I still think about it sometimes, then I'm just trying to get into a relationship that is set up to fail.
Right.
And so even now, I think I have a much more clear mind that it's something that would have never worked out.
Right.
And that helps me a lot. But I mean, the ball's in her court.
Yeah.
And I just can't act out of those feelings. Yeah, they're natural, but that doesn't mean that I should act on it.
I gave you bad advice and led you astray.
No, you didn't.
have to know that I will always stay Delulu on this corner of the table. I will always believe, that feelings are two-sided. I will always believe all of those things. And, like, even for this guy, like, maybe I did have some sort of feelings, and maybe that's what he's still holding on to. But yeah, I think you did a really mature thing by stepping away, because I think I read a quote or something that said, like, your absence or your lack of communication speaks louder than anything that you could ever say. So, like, you not being there and, like, her having to experience that and think about that, like, if she's meant to come back, like, she would come back more so to you not sending those texts, as opposed to this guy who is making his intentions very clear with me and texting me every feeling that he has. Like, I'm all for, like, expressing yourself, but at some point you really have to, like, think about, is this gonna get me the outcome that I want?
Yeah, and I do want to focus on not just the outcome, but how you're going about it.
Yeah.
And so this guy, you didn't mention it, but he was trying to gaslight you. He's trying to convince you and make you question your own friends and how you...
Just my feelings. Like,
exactly.
And I think, again, he was just doing it out of a place of, like, why is it not me? Like, why do you think you like him? And why do you think you don't like me? And it was just, I don't know if maybe I don't know, when we talked, he said he dated, I think he had a prior dating history. I'm not 100, like, I don't remember. But I don't know why he got so hung up on me. I thought, I think the feelings just weren't there on the same level.
Yeah. When a guy goes or starts doing that, trying to win the other person back, what happens is they start to become manipulative. And it doesn't mean that they're full out gaslighting you. It could be a low level of manipulation, but a guy's mindset is that they're trying to win you back. They're trying to prove themselves. And so when you do that, you're trying to put up a facade and not be on your best behavior. Show that you can be what you think the girl wants you to be.
Yeah.
But that in it of itself is manipulative, because you're not being fully truthful of the whole situation. You're not being truthful of yourself. And you're not willing to accept reality. And so as hard as it is to do, there's other people out there for you. And if that is your initial reaction in this situation, it does mean that you have more maturing to do. I recognize that in myself. But someone who has matured, someone who is self-confident and someone who's actually ready for a serious relationship, they're going to face rejection, and they're not going to allow it to affect their self-image, but just move on from it.
Yeah.
No, the mindset is just different. In that case, the mindset is, oh, now I know that this wasn't the right relationship for me. It's okay. I'm just going to work on myself and find the right person for me.
And I feel like that's super easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like, because if you did like that person a lot, even if it was one-sided, and I'm not just talking about this guy, I'm even talking about, like I said, I've been rejected in many situations. And, you know, in your mind, it feels like this was the one, this was perfect. Like, why isn't it working out? Like, and you can't help but make it about yourself and be like, oh, maybe it was something about me that he didn't like maybe it's something I can change. So I don't know, it is hard to do a little bit what Ethan is suggesting, and like not make it about yourself. But I feel like a strategy that I've used to get over somebody that has rejected me is just to like distract myself, which I don't know, maybe isn't the healthiest way, because you should face your problems head on, but sometimes right when you've been rejected, you're kind of in a vulnerable place. So to try to face it, you kind of project things onto yourself. So if maybe you can just be busy with your friends, like study, be busy with your physical fitness, whatever you need to do. And then after a few months, like you said, those thoughts still do keep you up. And you said morning. For me, they keep me up at night. I don't have time to lay in my bed when I wake up. I'm usually running late. But so those thoughts obviously come to you because you've been rejected. So it's still like a little, like a scar. And you do feel that sometimes, but maybe you yourself are a little bit stronger and a little bit more distanced, and a little more time has passed. So you're in a better position to deal with that.
Yeah, and something that you told me in the past is to pick things that bring me joy. And I think that's really helpful because it kind of reminds, or for me, it reminded me of what I'm passionate about and things that I enjoy outside of being in a relationship, and focusing on things that make me me. And so if you don't have those things, you can always find them. But just by doing those things, you are distracting yourself, but you're also bettering yourself. Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, you know, people love to say a relationship will find you when you're least expecting it, but it really is that. Like, if you're thinking that you want a relationship and that's like you're occupied with that thought all the time, you're not, like, no one's attracted to that energy. But if you're just so happy just being by yourself, like, that is what's going to send good vibrations around.
Yeah.
And I feel like also, like, I have a cousin who's, like, married, and she always reminds me, every time I'm, like, crying to her about a boy, she's like, Sania, like, you're so lucky you're single right now. Like, if you look at the whole, like, your whole life, you only have, like, these early years of your life where you can actually put all your time and effort and energy into just yourself, into your hobbies, into things that you like to spend time doing. Because pretty soon, like, you know, you're chasing after this thing, oh, I want to be married, I want a boyfriend. But as soon as you are, like, you lose that sense of self a little bit. Like, it's harder to have all of that energy on you. So you should really, like, value this time and cherish it and, like, enjoy it.
Yeah. This is definitely a topic that that we should explore in another episode, but just to comment on what you just said, the script has always been marriage is where we need to be, and that's when, like, we can really make the most out of life. The same is true about singleness, and I strongly believe whatever stage in life you're in, there's a lot of blessings and, like, benefits in both cases. When you're single, you have the time and flexibility to really enjoy your friendships and also try new things that are just a little harder to do when your time is more limited. And just as, like, a single person, I'm able to be there whenever someone needs me to be. And I'm, like, able to travel where I want to go and learn things that and not saying that you can't do those things when you're in a relationship, but you always, when you're in a relationship, you also have to think about what that person wants to do and how you meet in the middle. But as like when you're single, it's beautiful, and people don't talk about that enough.
Yeah, like I slept for 18 hours on Sunday because I could. I had no one to text, nowhere to go, so I was like, wow, I can just literally put my phone away and do that and not feel guilty about it.
I can't believe you brought that
up. Okay, so talking about our topic for today, still continuing on.
Yeah.
How should I deal with this guy? How can I let him know that it's time for him to move on? Any more than I've already done. Like, I've already said it with my words. And I do feel really, really guilty that he's still stuck thinking about me after so long.
I think the first thing is you have to release that guilt.
Yeah.
I think when we're in the talking stage, even when we're in the talking stage, we have some amount of responsibility to end things in a mature way and communicate, which you've done. But at the same time, you have no responsibility over how he receives that and how he feels from then on out. And so I think you feel a little responsible right now for how he's taking things. And you want, the people pleaser in you is really fighting and saying, hey, something is wrong, and I want to, like, you have empathy for this person, and you want to,
I want to fix it.
Yes, but that's not your job.
Yeah.
And so I think depending on what you want, if I were you, you can either send him another text. I would not call him, and just be very clear and say, I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I don't see this relationship continuing or going anywhere. And I just want to let you know that that's not because of like how I see you. Like, you are, like, I've enjoyed getting to know you, but I just can't be talking to you anymore if you're going to try to continue a conversation that just shouldn't be happening.
Maybe Ethan will draft this text for me.
Yeah, maybe I will. And if he keeps texting you after that, I would block him. Because at that point, you've defined a boundary and he hasn't respected that. And so at that point, then you have to move the boundary a little further because he's not respecting it.
Yeah. The thing is, like, he's not even that close to me. I didn't, like I said, I only, like, I met him off of, like, an app, and so we only had those 2 dates. Like, that's it. And they weren't, like, very far spaced out. They were, like, 2 weeks in between, so it wasn't like we talked forever. But I still, maybe I shouldn't call it guilt, but I just feel responsible. And not even more than responsible, I just want to, like, I feel like if there's an issue that's stemming because of me, like, I'd love to, like, do my best so that there's not an issue anymore, and so that he just doesn't feel bad anymore. Like, and again, he's not even my friend. He, like, I don't see him. There's no connection, but I just want people to be okay. I feel like there's already, like, I start feeling guilt in terms of, like, a bigger picture sense. Like, there's already so much stuff in the world that people probably have to deal with that makes them sad on a daily basis. So, like, I would love it if I could, I know I'm going to still make him sad because I'm not going to be able to give him the answer that he wants to hear. But I'd love for some way for him to, like, accept the answer and, like, be able to, like, be content with it and, like, yeah.
I hear you, and I think the answer to that is that you're not going to be able to give him an answer that he wants to hear, and he's not going to be satisfied. And you have to learn to be okay with that. But I don't think you owe him any more. You've already communicated, and I think that's all you owe him.
And, like, even just not texting him, like, that also feels bad. Like, I know I'm joking about it right now, but, like, it's hard for people to be emotional. And he's been emotional for so long and so consistently, and it's just, like, I feel really like I'm a horrible person for not responding, at least, you know?
Yeah. But this goes back to what I said about manipulation. Him getting emotional is him. He might not be consciously doing it, but he is manipulating you to feel bad. And he's trying to reach that side of you so that you'll text him back.
Yeah.
And this guy, no, I don't want to focus on this guy, but guys, a lot of times, they keep trying because they know that they're just chipping away at the ice. And they know that at some point they can get you because they've weakened you to that point. But that doesn't mean you should do it. You shouldn't.
All right.
You don't even have to send him that text that I just said. The more I think about it, that means he's like chipped far enough.
So, okay, I guess when you're on the receiving end, how do you know when you're supposed to move on?
Yeah. Once the other person gives a sign, and maybe we haven't really fleshed out what all the signs are.
Okay.
But any way that they've shown that they're pulling away.
Yeah, any distance. I like what you were saying earlier about, like, you know, maybe they're less available to hang out. Their texts are getting fewer. Because, like, sometimes, like we're talking about ending a talking stage here, you know? Like you said, you don't owe the other person a huge explanation. So sometimes just, like, just not texting back as frequently or at all, like, that's a sign.
Yeah. And this doesn't matter if you're the one giving or receiving. At some point, if the other person that you're talking to starts pulling away, that is a sign that things are not going well. And actually, if that happens, for me, I feel very strongly about talking to the person about it and saying, hey, this is what I've noticed. This is how it's making me feel. Am I reading things correctly? What do you think is happening? If the other person has like fully distanced themselves, they've ghosted you, you're not able to have that conversation. But then it's clear in that situation that you have to move on. If that person is pulling away a little bit, they're not being as responsive, I think it's important to have that conversation and then no one's left in the dark. And there's a chance that even if there is some distance, they didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Maybe based on circumstances, things are happening in the background.
Sure.
So it's also your job, not only your job, but it's one of your jobs to initiate that conversation. Just make sure that you're on the same page. But it's a sign that at least a conversation needs to happen or things are not going so well. And and let's say you're the person who feels like unsure on the relationship. How do you know when you should move on?
I think, so that one's kind of like a messy answer, because a lot of times that what happens is, you know, like you said, when you're on those apps or when you're talking to people, you're usually in the talking stage, you're maybe talking to multiple people. And maybe you'll be able to talk to multiple people until one of them really sticks out. You know, like something like, you know, what happened with you in Houston. Like, you were able to decide that you wanted to stop talking to the roaster because, like, first of all, because you didn't like the way that the roaster was behaving, kind of.
Yeah.
But also because of the way that, you know, how close and what a relationship that you and Houston were forming, it made you feel like, okay, maybe I should distance from other people. So I think one thing, if you are deciding if you want to distance from people, is if there's somebody else that, you know, that you obviously like more, you shouldn't keep talking to everyone. And then if you're only talking to one person and you need to decide then if, you know, you should keep talking to them or not talk to them, I feel like you should just think about the future. I feel like if you like take the stuff that you have at hand and like the situations that you have at hand and you think about projecting them in the future and thinking like, is this what I want? Like, can I be with somebody who has these traits, who, you know, problem solves this way or whatever? And if you answer those questions yourself, you'll be able to know when you're no longer interested in a certain relationship.
And just to add on that, I think it's important to know what your deal breakers are.
Yes.
And when the person has shown that they have a red flag for you to decipher, okay, is this something that we can work through, or is this actually one of my deal breakers and I should just stop?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they will convince themselves that they can adjust to the other person or they can change the other person. And I think in the talking stage, that's already a sign that maybe it is time to move on.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is when the other person talks about their needs, their boundaries, their deal breakers, if that is too much for you, which is what happened to me, I realized that I couldn't give her that care and attention. That was a sign for me to move on, because she let me know what she needs, and I understand, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will say, this is shifting topics a little bit, but in my case with Houston, we were in the talking stage, but maybe towards the end of the talking stage, where we either move forward or we didn't.
Right.
A lot of times when I've been in the talking stage in the past, I still felt like it was necessary to tell the other person that I wasn't interested anymore instead of ghosting. And so I think one thing we want to make very clear is that we do not support ghosting at all.
Yeah.
And we really want to make the case that you should not support ghosting either.
Especially at this age.
Yeah. I know that it's so easy to do, and it's so hard to have that conversation, even if it's just a text. It's so hard to write, to press send. It's easier to just do something else.
Yeah.
But like what I've done in the past is I'll let them know that I've really enjoyed getting to know them, but then I'll just tell them that I think we're better off as friends, or I don't see this continuing or going anywhere. Or if there's another person, I'll let them know I started talking to someone else and I really want to see where that goes, and I want to respect them. And so I'm a huge proponent of saying something.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're having trouble making the text, hitting send, to give it to a friend, and you can dictate the text and they can send it for you. But it's so important that you send that. A lot of times we have the fear that the other person is not going to take it well. We're going to hurt their feelings. But like we said, you're not responsible for how the other person takes the news, but I feel like you are responsible for delivering that news and just letting them know where your head is at, because there's even a small level of emotional investment. And so you just want to make things clear. And so you don't have to do it alone, but I feel like you will hurt their feelings way more if you don't tell them anything.
Yeah. Like a lot of times, especially on the apps, you feel like it's easier to just like stop texting or like start responding like less and less and less until it just automatically ends. But I feel like it's a lot better to say it outright, because you just never know how serious it is for the other person. Like even with this guy that I was talking about, like, you know, like for me it wasn't that serious, but for him it was. So like he really needed that clear text, and you just never know the person like across from you in that talking stage, like how deeply you've affected them. Because maybe for you, you're like, oh, this wasn't that serious, I can just stop texting them and like, you know, it won't hurt them, it won't hurt me, but maybe it will. And yeah, like I said, everyone's so old now. Like we've all just like been through life, and it, like I feel like you can just be nice and just send a text or communicate in whatever way you think is like that works for you. But I think you should just, it's really hard to do, but it's part of maturing on your own end to being able to say like, hey, I actually don't think I want this anymore. Because that's really hard to say, especially if you're a people pleaser like us. It feels impossible to say, but that's like you being true to yourself. And I think you should also, you know, respect yourself and be able to communicate your wishes to other people.
Very well said. You're if you are able to do that in any relationship, you're going to just have better friendships, better relationships with your parents and with your partner in the future. Okay. Another thing that you've brought up in the past and kind of does apply in the situation is the theory of sunken cost.
Right.
And so a lot of times, maybe not in this particular situation with this guy, but we feel like we've invested a lot. And so it feels easier to continue a relationship.
Definitely.
Just because you've gotten to know each other already, you've opened up and you've shared experiences. And so even if there are red flags, you're not really feeling a lot of chemistry.
You're trying to like earn back your sunken cost. Right? Like, especially if you're a guy and you're going on dates, like, sure, sunken cost could be money, how much money you've invested in the other person, but I hope everyone out there is not investing a lot of money in the talking stage. I feel like you should save that for when they're your girlfriend or boyfriend. But sunken cost could be, like Ethan was saying, like a lot of other things, like a lot of shared experiences. Maybe you've opened up and, like, you know, shared some, like, you know, deep secrets. You've had some serious conversations. Maybe you've, like, you know, spent a lot of time with this person. I feel like time is something that could be a sunken cost. So you could just have a number of different things. And after you've invested those things in a person, then to decide like, oh, maybe I should stop talking to them. It's really hard. It's like it feels like the not obvious decision because you're like, oh, but I already spent all this time on them. I want to at least make it worth it for me. I want to maybe keep it going because I've already done X, Y, Z with them. And that's something that's a concept that I struggle with a lot. And I feel like Ethan has some really good advice on sunken cost. I just wanted to explain what it was. But in terms of how not to feel that guilt and how not to let that sunken cost hold you in that relationship that's not maybe right for you.
Yeah, I just made this up, but along with sunken cost, we need to think about sunken gain. And I guess like that makes no sense because that's like an oxymoron. But what is the rising gain? Okay, so okay. I believe that in every relationship there is sunken cost. You've invested in it, you've opened up emotionally, you've become vulnerable, you've put in money and time and effort. But at the same time, there's things that you've gained from it. And so something that I told Houston was that I feel like she gave me a lot of hope for that there are girls out there who are actually good communicators and they won't like leave me feeling in doubt. And so that's something that I gained. I gained hope in like a healthy relationship in the future. And at the same time, I know that I've matured as a person. I understand more clearly now the work that has to go into something long distance. And now I know how to care for someone's needs better and the kind of time and attention that is required of me. And so even though there's sunken cost, there's rising gain. And the rising gain is going to prepare you so much more for your next relationship. And so it's easy when we're in a relationship or talking stage to think about what we've poured into. And that a lot of times that keeps us there, that acts as an anchor. But like we said earlier, a lot of times if you're not feeling sure about something, first of all, figure out why. And a lot of times it's a red flag or you have a deal breaker and there's something off about what they're saying or how they're acting. Don't ignore that. Talk to your friends about that because they're going to be more level-headed. And then also think about what the other person's needs are. If you can meet their expectations, if you can respect their boundaries. Because if those things are happening and you foresee an issue in the relationship in the future, the sunken cost is gonna like destroy you.
Yeah.
Because it will cost you way more in the future.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay, I don't know, you're going to pay even more.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're feeling like there's a lot of sunken cost, think about why you're feeling unsure in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
If it's for a good reason, it's time to move on. But also because you've benefited from this relationship, you have rising gain. I don't know if I like this term.
No, but I like how you're explaining rise and gain.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever thought of that, in like a...
Yeah. Now you're empowered.
Yeah.
And more ready for
Yeah.
the next relationship.
Mm-hmm. Instead of feeling like you have to stick around somewhere where maybe you're not happy
Mm-hmm.
or where you don't see it going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't feel like you've gained a lot out of the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but at the very bare minimum, you know more of what you want,
Mm-hmm.
and you're more sure of how the other person isn't right for you.
Right.
And so you're going to be a little more wise when you look for the next person.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully. I know that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, I think you explained that really well. It's a good way to deal with sunken costs when you're getting those thoughts,
Yeah.
to unanchor yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. It could be your hot air balloon if sunken cost is your anchor.
Yeah. Do you have anything more to say? I feel
No,
pretty good.
I
Okay.
think that's good.
Okay, so to wrap it up, we're going to ask ChatGPT how to break up with someone. And so we've talked about all these things. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say and if we agree. It's a little long, the answer, when I was looking at it before. But my question, very simple. How do you break up with someone?
Mm-hmm.
And ChatGPT gives us like a bunch of reasons. So we're just going to jump into number one.
Mm-hmm.
Be sure. Before initiating the conversation, take some time to reflect on your feelings and be certain about your decision to end the relationship. It's essential to be clear about why you want to break up.
I think that's pretty solid.
Super solid. I agree.
I feel like that's the main thing you need to answer for yourself, and that's also the main thing the other person is looking to hear from you. Like, why are you ending things?
Yeah. And I think when you end things, I think a lot of times you will feel doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you work through that doubt? You better have a good reason to end things in the first place. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you might regret
mm-hmm.
what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one. Choose the right time and place. Find a private and comfortable setting where you have an open and honest conversation, where you can have an open and honest conversation without interruptions. Avoid public places or situations where the other person might feel embarrassed or uncomfortable.
So I don't know if ChatGPT knows how we do things, but I think a text is pretty private. I think being physically with somebody in a private, comfortable setting, that usually means one person's house or something like that, which I think, like, do not do that.
No.
Don't ever try to break up in somebody's house. I think, like, find a common ground, like a cafe, like a park, like, if you are going to do it in person, be somewhere out in public, actually.
Yeah.
Not like a private place, just you and that person, because then you're never going to get out of it. Because both people are so comfortable that the other person is in a position where, maybe they feel like comfortable enough to ask you to stay
Mm-hmm.
and try to like fight the breakup. I've done that. I've fought the breakup before, and I've been like, so I think being in a more public place actually helps both people maintain their respect and
Mm-hmm.
not do things that they, otherwise would try to do.
Yeah, and it's easier to go your separate ways.
Yeah.
And so we definitely disagree with this one. The other thing that I will mention is that if the other person doesn't take things well, they get upset. Being in a public place is not super ideal because they might make a scene, but at the same time, you're more safe because if they like try to hit you or anything, there's people around.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're just at home or something
Mm-hmm.
and they don't take things well,
Yeah.
it can get really explosive and they're gonna make a scene anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But it's helpful just for your own protection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next one. Be honest and direct. when you talk to your partner, be straightforward and honest about your feelings. Avoid blaming or criticizing them, and instead focus on expressing your own emotions and reasons for wanting to end the relationship.
I think this is valid. I think when you're typically breaking up, like, yeah, it has to do with the other person, but a lot of it is a personal decision, and it is how maybe the relationship is affecting you or what you're getting out of it and things like that. So I think I agree with this one.
Yeah, I think it's important to use a lot of I's and not you's when you have this conversation. And also make sure that you have your reasoning all thought out of.
Yeah.
And so you can go into this conversation knowing that you can be clear about your reasoning, because you don't want to keep them guessing. You don't want them to feel bad about themselves.
Yeah.
But talk about what you've experienced and how you feel, but not in an accusing way.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Don't blame anything about them or how they are as a person. It's just maybe their personality isn't the right fit for you. Maybe, but that's about you. That you don't, adjust well to this certain personality type.
What if they ask you for, they're like, what could I have done better?
I think a lot of times the answer to that question is like nothing really. It's not about something they did or didn't do. Like, you wouldn't break up with them over like, oh, they did this they did this one specific thing the wrong way or whatever. I feel like a lot of times the reason for a breakup is a lot deeper. And a lot of times it's just it's about, things that they want that you can't give them, or things that you want that you feel like you're not receiving.
Yeah.
So like to ask somebody, if we even take Houston as an example, like to ask somebody like, oh, what could you have done better? Like maybe call me more. You can't do that. That's like something that they as a person don't like to do.
I think when you're in the talking stage, that is true. But I think when you're dating or you're married, then that's not true. And so maybe the reason why you have to break things off is they're not respecting your boundaries, and you've communicated that and they're still not listening, or they live life in a very unhealthy way. Maybe they have an addiction and they're not ready to give that up. And so in those situations, you have to use some judgment. It might not be best to just bring it up. I think if you're in the talking stage, I wouldn't talk, or even if they ask that, I wouldn't necessarily say anything. But if you're in a more serious relationship, and we'll talk about that in the future, you might have to talk a little bit about that, just That's because fair. You want them to do better in the future.
That's fair.
All right. Next one, listen and be empathetic. Allow your partner to express their feelings and reactions without interrupting or dismissing them. Show empathy and understanding, even if you disagree with their perspective.
Yeah. I think this is valid, for a breakup, for a fight, for anything. I think you should always remember to be respectful, and especially when you're disagreeing with what's coming out of the other person's mouth. I think it's really easy when you hear them say something that you're like, whoa, this is completely whack, that you want to interrupt them, or you want to try to set them straight, or explain why their thinking is wrong. But I think it's not about that at the end of the day. I think if there's ever any conflict or anything, I think you should just listen, because to that person, their feelings are valid, and their emotions and whatever their perspective is valid. So you should totally just let them listen, or let them talk, and you should listen and just try to understand them. Yeah.
This is not maybe the best way to approach it, but if you're breaking up with someone, you're the one breaking up, and they're speaking their mind, and you want to interrupt what they're saying might not be true. At the end of the day, your goal is to break up, not prove that you're right. And so I would, it makes no sense to me to try to correct them, especially if it's gonna lead to you breaking up anyways. If they're trying to convince you and you don't agree, then but still let them talk it out. and then say what you have to say. But I agree with Sania.
Yeah, I really like how you put that, Ethan. You have to really remember what the goal is of your conversation. It's not about proving that you're right. It's about, trying to get your message across that things are ending.
Okay. And next, set boundaries. Be clear about what the breakup means for both of you, including expectations for communication and contact moving forward. It's important to establish boundaries to help both parties move on. I don't want this to get too deep, but when I was talking to Houston and we ended things, she set her boundaries, and she said, she started tearing up, but she was like, please don't text me anymore. And that like put a knife in my heart, because I knew that that's not what she wanted to say, but she felt like she had to say that, and to respect her own boundaries and to protect her own heart. And so this is really important, because if she didn't say that and I texted her, it would make things more messy. And so think about, if you want to continue to talk to the person, if you want to be friends, how that would work, what that would look like. Otherwise, things can get messy.
Yeah. I think this is a super important one, because I think a lot of times breakups become hard because they get really dragged out, because, boundaries aren't being respected. Maybe they're not being set in the first place. So you really need to think about, you need to take the ending of things seriously, and you need to understand how that's supposed to look. So maybe like with this guy that kept texting me, like, I don't think I ever explicitly told him, like, please don't text me. And maybe that's something that I messed up when I was breaking up with him. Maybe it needs to be clearly stated, like, actually we can't be in communication anymore because it's not working out. So that both parties are very clear on what is and isn't possible.
Yeah. Okay. The next one, be prepared for their reaction. Understand that your partner may be upset, angry, or hurt by the breakup. Give them space to process their emotions and try to remain calm and compassionate throughout the conversation. Yeah, and the way that you do that is by being a good listener. And a lot of times being a good listener means being an active listener. And so if they say something, saying things like, I hear what you're saying, and like what you bring up some good points, and have them know that you're listening. Maybe not repeat, but kind of reiterate what they've said and how you think it can apply to you. But it's important that you're calm and you're supportive over what they have to say. Okay. Next, respect their feelings, acknowledge the significance of the relationship and the impact the breakup may have on your partner. Be respectful of their feelings and avoid minimizing or dismissing their emotions.
Damn, ChatGPT is doing good.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty valid. You just always have to have respect. Like, this goes into being like a good listener. Like, you did have, even if it was just a talking stage, you were involved with this person to whatever extent. Maybe it doesn't feel that deep on your end, but for whatever reason it might be deeper on their end. You just have to be prepared for whatever their reaction is, and you just need to respect it. And definitely never ever be dismissive or try to convince them that what they're thinking or feeling is like invalid or untrue. Like, I think you should respect everyone's feelings, and again, just focus on your end goal. Like, let them express themselves, but remember what the goal is.
Well said. Take care of yourself. Ending a relationship can be emotionally challenging, so make sure to prioritize self-care and seek support from friends, family, or a therapist if needed.
I would just add to this, like stuff Ethan and I already mentioned in this episode, like, focus on things that make you happy, get into your hobbies more, like, get outside. I know everybody says this, but like literally being physical does have an impact on your mental health. So like, just like, be in the sun, like, be with your friends, like, just try to make the world a happier place for yourself. Especially when you're like feeling that person's presence no longer there, you really need to lean on other loved ones to support you kind of and be there for you.
Yeah, ideally, like when you were talking to someone when you were in a relationship, you weren't solely relying on that person. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully you have other relationships outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we can see now how much more important investing in those relationships are, because that's what's gonna, those people will always be there for you
Yeah.
through the ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then lastly, give it time. Healing from a breakup takes time, so be patient with yourself and your partner as you navigate the process of moving on and adjusting to life without each other.
Yeah.
We both agree.
We both agree.
Okay, good job, ChatGPT. Yeah. I think it got off to a little bit of a rough start, but the rest is solid. It actually doesn't really tell us how to have that conversation.
Right.
But these points are all important going into the conversation for your mindset, and then also
coming out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, how to deal with it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I just read this last paragraph that ChatGPT has to tell us. It says, remember that every relationship is unique, so there's no one-size-fits-all approach to breaking up. Trust your instincts and prioritize honesty, respect, and kindness throughout the process.
Yeah. I feel like this is pretty generic again. Could apply to any tough conversation that you're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
Just be a good person. Honestly, just remember the other person in front of you is also a person. You're telling them something that they probably don't want to hear. So be compassionate to that, but also don't let that be something that makes you change your mind. Like Ethan was saying and stressed a lot throughout this episode, like you really need to know why you're breaking up, and you need to like remember that. And it needs to be very clear in your mind so you can communicate it clearly, and so that, you know, the reasoning doesn't get lost in the discussion.
Yeah. Just to wrap things up, we know that this is a lot more serious of a topic to talk about, and we thank you for joining us and listening through it. And if we want to figure out how to do this well, if you ever need advice or you're not sure how to text the other person or communicate, always feel free to DM us. You can also comment down below if you feel like you want to, and yeah, we would love to help you through that. But it's tough, and we want to let you know that you got this, and don't be afraid. Think about rising game. Okay, until next time.